I recently uploaded a video that went through my C4 settings for movies and TV shows. In this video, I'm going to talk you through my gaming settings. Once again, I'm going to try and keep it super simple. You don't need to change all the settings for every single game that you play. We're going to go through Xbox Dolby Vision, HDR10 for Xbox and PlayStation, as well as SDR consoles like the Nintendo Switch. If you do find this video useful, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. And please bear in mind, what you're seeing through the camera is not what my eyes are seeing, but I've done my best to lock the settings in place.
So the first thing that we are going to set up is our Xbox console. So we're going to jump right over to our settings, and we're not going to change too much here. It's more just to confirm we've got a few things set correctly. So come into TV and display options, and you want to make sure that you are resolution, you have 4K UHD. You have refresh rate 120 Hertz. We are going to come across to video modes. We're going to allow 50 Hertz, allow 24 Hertz, leave them both on. Then we are going to allow auto low latency mode. So this will put the TV into low latency mode for less input lag when we are using the game mode, but more on that in a second. Variable refresh rate. This has changed in a fairly recent update, I think earlier on in 2024. We want that to have gaming only because we don't want it on when we're watching movies. If you do watch movies with your Xbox, we're going to leave allow YCC422 off. We're going to allow 4K. We're going to allow HDR10. I would suggest you leave auto HDR off just because it forces standard dynamic range games into HDR, and I've had a few instances in the past playing older games that just look terrible, really sort of completely blown out whites and things, so leave that off. This setup first, we're going to look at Dolby Vision. So this obviously only applies to Xbox users. We're going to set up Dolby Vision first. So allow Dolby Vision, and Dolby Vision for gaming is going to be ticked. I have seen very little difference between Dolby Vision gaming and HDR10 gaming. I know some people say that HDR10 is better. I have compared the two, and I will do in this video, I'll do a comparison just to show you the difference to save you having to go through all the settings yourself for each of them. I don't see much of a difference, if any. Dolby Vision is something that the Xbox supports for gaming, so I choose to use that. My TV has Dolby Vision, why would I turn it off? There's probably some technical reasons there, but again, to my eye, I can see very, very little difference, so I leave Dolby Vision on, and that's what we're going to set up first in this video. That's about it when it comes to our settings. The only other thing we want to do is to go into video fidelity and overscan, and we are going to leave this at auto detect. Color depth we're going to leave at 10-bit. We're going to put for that one. Let's just change that to 10-bit. So keep that. And color space we're going to leave to standard. That's the Xbox setup. We are now going to jump into a game. I will go into Indiana Jones first. And what you'll notice is when you're loading into the game itself, in the top right, we should see the Dolby Vision symbol pop up in just a second. Give it a moment while it switches over. I think it's already on it. Yeah, there we go. Dolby Vision has appeared in the top right. So we are going to calibrate our Dolby Vision settings first. Now, as I said earlier on, I want to keep this super simple. I don't want, there are some videos that will go through and tell you to change every single setting and every single setting for each game. We're not going to do that here in this video. We're going to keep it nice and simple, and I've been really happy with these settings. So hold down the settings button on your remote, which will bring up your settings here. And we are going to go into here and just make sure that the picture mode is at game optimiser. Then we are going to come down to advanced settings, into brightness, and Dolby Vision is pretty much all set for us. There's not a huge amount we need to change. So just make sure that your OLED brightness is at 100. All of these will be grayed out because Dolby Vision has set them. Expression enhancer, I'll try and show you what this does. It does bring a little bit of extra brightness. I'm trying to find something. If I look at these stones on the floor here, I don't know if you can see that. Detail and off are very, very similar. Detail just slightly brings out the whites a little bit more, or the brighter areas of the stone. Brightness kind of brightens up the whole image. So if you can see in the sky there. This will be down to preference. I leave it off personally. I don't think it makes too much of a difference. If you want a slightly brighter picture, obviously you can leave brightness on. Detail, again, is very similar to off, but I leave mine off in these settings. Nothing else to change here. Leave motion ICAO off. We're going to come back into colour. Colour depth is already set for us, so we can't change that. Tint we're going to leave. Fine tune we are not going to touch. And white balance we're going to make sure that we have set to warm 50. Now in my previous video I did mention that some people might find this quite yellow. Now looking through my camera, it is on the warmer side. It doesn't look that warm in it to eye. It's just I've tried to set the white balance the best I can. What I would suggest you do, as I did in my picture settings for movies and TV shows video, is to set this at warm 50, play a game for an hour, come back, and if you really think it looks too yellow and warm, turn that back down, and most of the time people will say, oh, that looks too blue now. So warm 50 is the accurate colour. This is sort of the accurate whites. So that's what you should have if you want accuracy, but obviously it's down to preference. I keep mine to warm 50. I'm very used to it now. Anything below warm 50 to me looks too blue. So just play around with it for a little bit, see how you get on, and hopefully you agree that warm 50 looks the best. Clarity, again, we're going to leave all of this off. Super resolution, I leave off. Everything else is greyed out for us because we are using Dolby Vision. And that is it into the picture settings. We are now going to go to the game optimizer settings on the TV. And to get to that, you just press the settings button once and you will be greeted to the here, which is sort of LG's game settings. First thing I'm going to address is this here may be grayed out for you and you might not be able to flick through these kind of built-in mini presets. If that is the case, go back into your settings. Second, go into sound and just make sure sound mode is game optimizer. Mine is grayed out because I'm already set to it. You might have to switch to something other than Dolby Vision to ungray that out. So if it is grayed out for you, flick back into HDR10, which we're going to do in a second in the video, but this needs to be on game optimizer. If it isn't, these will be grayed out. Now I personally don't use these, but what these are, they're sort of presets pretty built in. So you've got one for first person shooter games, one for RPG games, one for real-time strategy games. That one is sports, which is obviously very vivid. User, you can go in and tweak them, and standard. So if you're someone that wants some presets and you want to switch between games, by all means you can just quickly flick through these. You don't have to go in and change any of the settings. You can just go, right, I'm playing a first-person shooter. I like how that looks. I'm playing a RPG. I like how this looks. The sport one's quite good for sports games because, like, if you're playing FIFA or something, it does make the colours pop a lot more. Okay, so in here, darkroom mode, just quickly to address. If you are playing in a really, really dark room, this will darken the screen. I always leave that off. Multi-view, I've never really played with. I think this is when you can have, two sort of things showing at once. Never used that personally, so I'm going to try and get out of that now if I can, or if I completely... There we go, we're back into the settings of the TV. So let me just come back out of this and get back into my Xbox. Okay, back into these optimizer settings. And we're going to go into game optimizer. Give it a second. I do notice the menu system does slow down a bit when you're using Dolby Vision. So we've got our frames per second up here. We can't change anything here. This is all just sort of showing us here. This is the little thing that you can change in the middle that I just showed you when you can change between all the different game settings. It's just another way of getting to it. Reduce blue light, I'm going to leave off. Darkroom mode is the same thing that we just talked about. Game dashboard is this is what you're seeing now. You can turn that on and off, so you can get to it by pressing the settings button, which we obviously want to. Now, VRR in G-Sync and AMD FreeSync Premium. Again, not a super technical video. I don't want to go into too much here, but Xbox is AMD FreeSync Premium. PlayStation is VRR and G-Sync. If you switch between consoles, turn them both on and it should automatically detect the right one. If you're using an Xbox, have this one turned on. If you're using a PlayStation, have this one turned on. There is a lot more to it. Again, it's basically their sync settings and their sort of VRR settings. Just, the Xbox, PlayStation is all you really need to be aware of. It makes very little difference 144 hertz mode is for using when you're plugging connecting to a PC, which I leave turned off because obviously this isn't connected to a PC. Auto low latency mode I leave to on, so your TV automatically goes into low latency mode when the TV notices that it's getting fed a game signal. So you can see in the top right there it says low latency on. Fine tune dark areas, I don't change any of that, and you can change the menu color if you wish. Over here to picture. Now here you can start to tweak the settings on how your game look. I personally don't touch these. I think out the box it looks fine, but if you want to bring the blacks, you can crush the blacks a little bit more on the black stabilizer there, or make darken the image. White stabilizer does the opposite. Game contrast I leave to 100. Game black level, again, this will make the shadows darker, which some people like to do. I've seen some people recommend going down to 49, but you know, to me that makes absolutely no difference. And we're gonna come down to game sharpness is set to 10. Now, game color depth, this is the only thing I do sometimes tweak. I think by default it's at 50 or 55. If you want your games to pop a little bit more, this will just bring the colors out. And obviously you can go crazy and it will look, you know, completely orange and will completely boost it up. But I personally like my video games to be quite colourful and pop just that little bit. So I have mine, I think, set to 57. But usually anything between 50 and 60 is ideal. Some older games or duller games do benefit from this being turned up a little bit, particularly when you are connecting a Nintendo Switch, which we will look at in a second. But I'm going to leave mine at 55 now. But that is one that is worth playing around with. Everything else I leave. Sound I don't touch just because I have my console, well, my setup has got an AV receiver, so I don't have the TV audio, but you can obviously tweak these and play around with these for your audio setup, but there's not much that I'm going to touch there. And as I say, I am really happy with these settings. I think all games look really nice. Obviously, I'm only showing Indiana Jones at the moment, but it looks really good. Colours seem accurate. Obviously, I'm in the desert at the moment, so it is a warmer image. But we're going to flick over now to HDR10. So what you're going to need to do, and this is where you can compare, and I'm going to compare straight away. So what I will do is if I look here, and I'll go in and change to HDR10 and then come back and look at this exact same sort of image here. Now, what you'll need to do is to go back into settings on your Xbox, and you are going to go into TV and display options. We are going to go into video modes, and this time we're going to untick Dolby Vision for gaming. And we're going to go into our, is it calibrate? No, not calibrate. I forget where the calibrate HDR for games. Come into here. Click next. And here you can go in and calibrate your settings. Now, for HDR. Now, for Dolby Vision, that's already done for you. But if you go into here, what you can do is you can go through and brighten the image, darken the image, and you've got what it should look like on the right there and what it should look on the left. It's useless me doing this through the camera because my camera will not pick up exactly what I'm seeing on the TV. But I would go through this and just get this all set up. It will show you a before and after image. So you've got your calibrated image on the left and the uncalibrated image on the right. So if we're using HDR10, it does benefit from doing a little bit of calibration just there. Once you have done that, you will need to go into a game. What you'll notice though is you have to quit the game because you'll notice it still says Dolby Vision in the top right there. So to force it into HDR10, you actually have to close the game and then relaunch the game. And what you should notice this time is when we go back into the game, it knows that we've disabled Dolby Vision and it should pop up with HDR in the top right, which it has. So we're going to go back to that same spot and we will compare and see if there is any noticeable difference between using Dolby Vision and HDR10. So this is our HDR10 image. I've tried to come back to the exact same spot. I've got, what's that? I felt like something just happened there. I've come to the exact same spot that I was in the previous section. So what I'm just going to quickly do is just flick between Dolby Vision and HDR10 on the Xbox, just so you can see that there's, to me, very little difference. So this is, and I've tried to get to the exact same spot, but I appreciate I'm probably not exactly the same. But this is HDR10, and let's just quickly flick to Dolby Vision. So if you're on an Xbox, you have the decision to make whether you are going to use Dolby Vision or HDR10 for your gaming. But now we're going to set up, if you do choose to use HDR10, or if you're using a PlayStation, these will obviously apply to you. So I'm in the Indiana Jones again. We are going to go into our TV's settings, and we are going to make sure that Game Optimizer is the mode selected. We're going to go into our advanced settings, into brightness. OLED brightness we're going to leave to 100 because we're using HDR. Dynamic tone mapping I leave to on. HGIG, if you're going to calibrate it professionally, you might be able to get a more accurate image slightly, but to me that is extremely dim and I want my image much brighter. I think the difference there is massive to my eyes, so I leave dynamic tone mapping on for my gaming. Expression enhancer, like we talked about in Dolby Vision, it does brighten the image ever so slightly, and brings out the, if you're looking at this rock here, the whites sort of get a little bit brighter. It's hard to sort of see in the shadows down here. To me, I leave it off though. It doesn't make enough of a difference to warrant leaving it on. Video range set to auto, motion eye care off. Let's go back into color. We can't change the color depth, it will be on 55. Tint 0, color gamut auto detect. There is very little difference between these. If you want a more punchy image and you want your colors to pop a little bit more, native will do that for you. So, you know, there is an argument that some games do look better with native. Personally, I leave it to auto detect for a more accurate image. Some sort of arcadey games, in older games, native, it does look better. I think just having those colors pop out more is a good thing. But for accuracy, I'm going to leave it on auto detect here. Not going to do any of the fine tune settings. We are going to go into white balance and we're going to set it to warm 50. And as I said previously, warm 50 is the most accurate color temperature. So if you want accuracy for warm 50, if you think it looks too yellow, which I appreciate when we're in the middle of the desert, it is more yellow. Try it at warm 50 for an hour, come back, turn it down, and if it looks too blue for you as you turn it down, you know that your eyes have gotten used to warm 50. But warm 50 is what it should be at. That is obviously down to preference though. Not going to change any of these. And that is us done here. We're just going to quickly come into the Game Optimizer menu just by pressing settings once. Again, if this is grayed out at this point, you need to go back into your settings and go into sound and make sure that the select mode game opt, you have got your sound mode as Game Optimizer. If that is still grayed out for HDR, I would suggest you go back to sort of like normal TV, and you should be able to get into this setting. I don't know why it's grayed out for my HDR10, but that's the reason this will be grayed out. Okay, so if this is grayed out and you can't flick through these sort of presets, it's because of that setting there. Now, as we did with Dolby Vision, I don't use any of these, but they're handy to have if you just want to go through presets without changing any settings, but I leave mine on standard. We are going to leave darkroom off because that is obviously, if you're in a dark room, it just darkens the image ever so slightly. We're going to jump straight into the Game Optimizer settings here. And we can see that we've got auto low latency, low latencies on there. We've got 119 frames per second. Leave that off, leave that off. Prevent input delay. You've got standard and boost. I am not a competitive gamer, but potentially you could flick between these. I've always left it on standard, and it would, I've had no problems with input delay. As mentioned previously, but if you have skipped straight ahead, if you are using a PlayStation, you want VRR and G-Sync on and AMD FreeSync off. If you are using an Xbox, you want AMD FreeSync on and VRR G-Sync off. If you have both connected, leave them both on and it should automatically select the right one for you. 144 Hertz mode we're going to leave off. Auto low latency mode we are going to have on, so our TV automatically goes into low latency mode. And the only other thing we're going to do is come into picture. I don't change any of these. Again, these are sort of down to preference. Some games might benefit from crushing the blacks a little bit more and upping the sharpness, but I leave mine set to default. However, my game color depth I do bring up ever so slightly, depending on the game. Sometimes that it must be getting those colors to pop a little bit more is a benefit to my eye. I prefer it how it looks, but anything between 50 and 60 seems to be a good spot. I leave mine on 55 here. Don't do anything for sound unless obviously you're using the TV for your audio. Come in and have a little play with these. But I don't. I use a AV receiver with a speaker setup, so I don't play with those. And that is us done for Dolby Vision and HDR10 settings. As I've said, I've been really happy with how these look across multiple games. This is Indiana Jones. I can quickly flick over to Flight Sim to show you how that looks in HDR10. And as you can see, Flight Sim looks fantastic as well. You know, looks really, really nice. You know, I'm really happy with these settings. So the last thing we're going to do is we're just going to pop over to the Nintendo Switch, which obviously doesn't support HDR or Dolby Vision. And there's just a few things we're going to look at when using a Switch on this TV. So now we are feeding the TV some SDR content using the Nintendo Switch. What you will notice is that when you press the settings button once, you don't have the game optimizer settings here. However, if we hold down our settings menu, you can see that we do have a game optimizer setting. It is understanding that we're picking up a game signal. Just a few things we're going to change here. This is what I have mine set at. So I've got brightness to 90, adjust contrast 85, black level 50, auto dynamic contrast. Again, some people might like that. It boosts the contrast quite a bit. But I think it looks better off. But you can see that there is a difference there. It does brighten everything up and just pops the contrast. Again, the camera, what you're seeing through the camera and what I'm seeing through my eye is slightly different. But have a play with this, whatever you sort of prefer. But I leave mine set to off. Gamma 2.2, unless you are in a completely dark room. If you're in a really dark room, you could go 1886, but 2.2 gives a little bit more detail in the shadows for games, so I leave that one there. Video range, leave it to auto. Motion eye care off. Coming into colour, I turn my colour depth up a little bit. I can't remember if default it was on 50. If the default is 50, I've turned it up to 55, just because I like the colours to pop a little bit more. And here, this is one thing that I often flick between. Some games on the Switch look a bit dull, so turning it to native, just though it's not the complete accurate image because it's converting it to like an without getting too technical, it's taking the SDR and changing it to HDR colours. Native sometimes does look better for gaming. On the Switch, you can hopefully see the difference there as I'm flicking between the two. Auto detect can look a little bit dull. For many games, I leave it on native, and currently playing Zelda, I'm actually prefer the native look, so I'm going to leave it on native. Not going to do anything in fine tune. White balance, we want our color temperature once again down to warm 50 for an accurate image. As I've mentioned in the previous two sections and in my previous videos, this may look yellow to you at first, but you play it for an hour and then try putting it back to warm 0 or to 0, and to me that looks really blue. Obviously what you see from my camera is not completely accurate. Anything between warm 40 and warm 50 is where it should be, but warm 50 is for accuracy. Not going to touch anything else. And clarity. For Switch, I do have super low resolution set to low, just because obviously the resolution of the Switch is much lower than my other games consoles. You could bump the sharpness up a little bit as well if you want to, but I leave mine set to 10. Everything else I leave off. True motion I leave off as well for the gamings, and then that is us set up for SDR consoles like the Switch. So thanks for watching. Hopefully this video has been useful. If it has, please do give it a like and please do subscribe. But obviously, hopefully that's helped you set everything up in a really technical way that gets you changing settings for every single game that you play. I just wanted to keep it straightforward. I've been really happy with these settings. I don't go in and change them. Every game I play, I'm really happy with how this TV looks. It's fantastic. If you do want to set your TV up for movies and TV, I do have another video for that. Link in the description. Thanks for watching, and I will speak to you soon.